Hello and welcome everyone to IT Pro Guide. Mohammed Niaz with you. In this video, we're going to discuss about site-to-site VPN with Microsoft Azure and an on-premises network. In on-premises, we have a Fortigate Firewall. So we're going to see a step-by-step demo on how to configure Microsoft Azure to connect with an on-premises Fortigate firewall for a site-to-site VPN connectivity. This video is a part of a series of videos about Azure Site Recovery. We're going to see how to migrate or how to move your workloads from on-premises to Microsoft Azure. We have different methods to move and different options for the connectivity. Site-to-site VPN adds security in terms of data integrity, confidentiality, and origin authentication for your communication. As you're moving from on-premises to Microsoft Azure, you have different options to connect it. Express route is an option, site-to-site VPN over public internet. Then you can access over the public internet using remote desktop protocol also. But why we choose site-to-site VPN? Because it give you encrypted connectivity so that your data is safe, you can communicate, and also your users can access this data as they accessed before with the local IP address. You will feel like a natural extension of your data center even if the data center is far from you. So let us start with Azure. We're going to see what are the setups that are required in Azure to configure a site-to-site VPN. Then we will configure in on-premises Fortigate Firewall. Then finally, we're going to see how we can prepare a secondary domain controller in Microsoft Azure. And the reference is going to be primary domain controller in on-premises behind your Fortigate Firewall. So this will help you when we start moving workloads in the next video from hypervisor environment or VMware environment. We can simply move our workloads to Microsoft Azure and we can point to the new DNS server so that it can log in, it can authenticate with our secondary domain controller in Microsoft Azure. So let us see how to do this. Look at the infrastructure. In on-premises, we have Hyper-V or VMware virtualized environment and one domain controller connected to all the users over the local area network connection, and this is our network 192.168.2.0/24 is the production network. Then I have a public IP here and it is connected to internet. This is how the on-premises infrastructure looks. So when it comes to Microsoft Azure, the first thing I'm going to do is to create a virtual network. So this is my virtual network, and as I said before, virtual network is your private space where you put all your resources, and this is a boundary of your network, and this is your space in Microsoft Azure. Once you create virtual network, then you can create subnet, and you can see that the CIDR block that I'm going to use here is 10.0.0.0/16, which is totally different from on-premises, and it should be like that. You cannot use the same CIDR block in Microsoft Azure as you have in the site, because later we're going to prepare a site-to-site VPN, so we have to make sure there is no clash between the IP networks in Microsoft Azure and on-premises. So once you prepare the virtual network with the CIDR block, then you have to create a subnet, for example, production, then web subnet, database subnet, application subnet. Like on-premises, you can create different subnet to isolate your virtual machines in Microsoft Azure. So once you create the subnet, then we're going to create a gateway subnet for virtual private network. Then later we're going to create a VPN, a virtual private network. Then we have to create a local network in Microsoft Azure. So local network means we're going to say that what kind of local network we have, so that we can, when we create a site-to-site connection, we can mention that this is a local network that I'm going to expect for this site-to-site connection. So these are the steps that we need to prepare in Microsoft Azure. Once we finish this, we're going to move to Fortigate, and we will see what are the configurations required at Fortigate. Then finally, we're going to see site-to-site connectivity. Then we will replicate the domain controller, primary domain controller, to a secondary domain controller. So that is all what we're going to do in this demonstration. Log into Microsoft Azure portal. with your credentials. The very first thing that we're going to do is to create a virtual network, and that is going to be the boundary of your private space in Microsoft Azure. So select virtual network from Azure services, then click on create virtual network, select your subscription, then create a resource group. A resource group is like a folder where you can organize all the services that you bought from Microsoft Azure into one resource group. Then give a name to the virtual network. Here it is VNet Cloud. Then select a region. You cannot extend this region, this VNet, to another region. Then create a CIDR block address. The CIDR block, you have to make sure there is no clash between on-premises. Then you can add subnets here. I'm going to edit the default subnet to production subnet. You can create something like web tier, application tier, database tier, like that. And you can edit the subnet address range also. I'm going to give it like 10.0.1.0/24. Then click to save it. Then I'm going to leave the other options as it is. Just complete the wizard and click review and create. Once it complete with the validation, click to create a virtual network. Now the virtual network deployment has been progressing. Once the deployment has completed, go to the resources, VNet resources, then click on the subnets. We're going to create a gateway subnet here. Click on gateway subnet. This is going to be used for VPN gateway. Now the gateway subnet has created. Next, we have to create virtual network gateway. So search for virtual network gateway. Then click on create virtual network gateway. Now fill up the details, subscription, the name of the instance, then region need to be same as virtual network and other resources, then SKUN generation as per your requirement, then select the virtual network, VNet Cloud. This is the one we have created just before, and the gateway subnet has selected automatically. I don't have a public IP existing with me, so I have to create a new public IP. So let's create a new public IP. Here you just need to give a name for the public IP address, and an IP address will be assigned automatically to this VPN gateway. Then leave the other settings as it is, then click review and create. Once the validation has passed, click on create to create the virtual network gateway. This is going to take another 45 minutes to complete the deployment. Now virtual network gateway deployment has completed. The next step we're going to do is to create a local network gateway. A local network gateway include the informations of your on-premises networks. So create local network gateway. Here you have to enter the public IP of your on-premises and the address space that's going to communicate with Microsoft Azure. So let's give a meaningful name, local network, something like that. Then give public IP address of your firewall in on-premises. Here for my Fortigate Firewall, the public IP address is here. Then give an address space. As you saw in the lab diagram, the on-premises network is 192.168.2.0. So 2.0/24. If you have more subnet, you can add it here. Then select the resource group, and the location need to be same. Click to create local network gateway. So when we create site-to-site connection, we're gonna select this local network gateway to allow site-to-site VPN connectivity with the virtual network gateway that we have created just before. Now let's go back to virtual network gateway. We're going to create a site-to-site VPN connection here. For that, click on the connections, then add a new connection. So site-to-site IPsec, that is the connection type that we're going to use. Then give a meaningful name for the connection. You can have multiple connections in same virtual network gateway. Azure to Fortigate, then virtual network gateway. You can see now the local network gateway you have to choose from here. So the local network, what we have is already configured. Then you have to give a shared key. This key gonna configure in Fortigate also. Now the VPN connection, site-to-site connection has been completed. You can see the status remain unknown because we didn't complete the configurations required in the Fortigate Firewall, and there is no data packets between Fortigate and Azure Virtual Network Gateway. Let's go to the Fortigate and start configuration. So this is on-premises configurations that we're going to do. Log into Fortigate Firewall. So the first thing we're going to do here is go to VPN and run IPsec wizard. Click on IPsec wizard, then select custom and give a meaningful name for the VPN setup. Here I'm gonna name to Azure VPN. Then next we have to configure the VPN tunnel. The first thing that you have to enter is the public IP address of Azure VPN connection. Let's go back to Azure portal and get the public IP address. You can see the virtual network gateway hold a public IP address. Let's copy it from Azure portal to Fortigate Firewall. Here my public IP address is 52.170.32.72. Let's add it here. Then interface is a public interface, so WAN, then disable the NAT, then keep the detection on ideal, then enter the pre-shared key. If you don't remember the pre-shared key, you can go back to Azure portal and from the connection click on shared key and copy the shared key from here. Then go back to Fortigate Firewall, then enter the pre-shared key. The version we're going to use here is IKE2 that have more security than IKE1. Then there are two proposals that we have to add, that is phase 1 and phase 2, one for the initial key exchange, then for the data exchange. So there are different encryption and authentication algorithms that site-to-site VPN connection use. So we're gonna tune it at the Fortigate site now to match with the proposals of Azure VPN connectivity. So I'm gonna configure. This is what recommended as in the Fortigate documents. So you can follow the Fortigate document also. Then add local address and remote address in phase 2 selector. expand advanced and configure the algorithms for the phase 2 proposals. Now all the configurations required has completed. Let's click on OK. The site-to-site IPsec VPN connection has completed. Now you can see that the connection status is inactive because we have to create a policy to allow traffic in and out for Azure. So let's click on the address object. This is something like the local network gateway we created in on-premises. Here we have to create an address object so that we can show this address into the policy to allow traffic in and out. So let's create a new address. Select the interface, then IP address. Here the CIDR block of Azure network, I'm going to give it here. Then name it Azure networks. So in Azure network, the CIDR block I'm using is 10.0.0.0/16. So that you have to create as an address here. So once you complete with the addresses, then go back to IPv4 policy. Let us create a policy for in and out for Fortigate Firewall to Azure connection. Let's create our first policy. Click on the create button. First, we're going to configure the traffic to Azure VPN. So the incoming interface is going to be LAN and the outgoing interface is going to be Azure VPN. Then click on the source. Source is all. Then in the destination, we're going to put Azure network. So any traffic going to Azure network is going to be allow here. Then keep the other settings as it is. Select all services. You can restrict the services also if you need. Then disable the NAT. That is all. Click OK. Next, we need to create another policy to allow traffic from Azure to Fortigate. So let us name it as from Azure VPN. Then the interface is going to be Azure VPN here. Then the outgoing interface is local area connection LAN. Then the source is Azure network. And the destination is going to be all here. Then click on the services and put all for now. Then disable the NAT option. Then click OK. Now we finished with the policies. The next step is to create a static route. For that, go to network. Then select static route. Then enter the CIDR block address here for Azure network. Any traffic to Microsoft Azure network have to go through the interface, VPN interface. So let us select the interface as Azure VPN, then give an administrative distance value less than the default static route so that any traffic to Azure CIDR block gonna go through Azure VPN. So now the configuration has completed. Let's see what changes you can see in the connection, site-to-site connection in Azure side. Once you refresh and open the connections in Azure, you can see that it is connected. Then from the Azure, you can go to monitor and IPsec monitor. Once you refresh, you will see the connections become active and there is no traffic so far. Next, I'm going to create a virtual machine in the same Azure network so that I can try to ping to local on-premises network, and my plan is to replicate the primary domain controller with the secondary domain controller that I'm going to spin up now. So let us create a virtual machine. Once you select appropriate configurations for your virtual machine, click on the create button to spin up the virtual machine in Azure. This virtual machine is in the same region, in the same VNet we're gonna, so that it can connect to on-premises with local IP address. So over the public internet, these two data centers, your on-premises and Microsoft Azure private space, gonna communicate like a local connection as we have a site-to-site tunnel deployed. Let's access with the remote desktop IP first. Now we have logged into the virtual machine in Microsoft Azure. First thing I'm going to try is the connectivity between on-premises and Microsoft Azure. You can see that I'm able to ping to both machines now. If you want to troubleshoot this area, like the connectivity between on-premises and Microsoft Azure after your configuration, the first thing you have to do is to come to the networking and see what kind of security rules you have. So you can see that I kept all rules allow between on-premises and Microsoft Azure, but you can tune according to your requirement. You don't need to keep everything allowed, but as this is a demonstration purpose, I kept it like that. And also you can turn off the Windows firewall, or you can add appropriate rules to Windows firewall in order to troubleshoot and complete the configuration requirements. Once you fix it with your connection issues, then we can try to join the virtual machine that we have in Azure with on-premises domain controller. So if you found any issue, the next possible issue is the DNS value that you have in your network interface of Azure virtual machine. So let's add our domain controller also to the DNS entry. So let's add the domain controller in on-premises also as a DNS server in Azure Virtual Machine network configuration. Now we're going to join this server to the domain. We have to restart and prepare this machine as a Active Directory domain controller. Login back to virtual machine. First thing we're going to do is to add roles. Active Directory domain service. Let us complete this wizard quickly. Completed. Let's promote this as a domain controller. Add as a domain controller to an existing domain, and the existing domain is itproguide.online. Click next. Enter the administrator credentials of on-premises Active Directory. Then add the password here, then click OK. Click next. Then complete the wizard. And the domain controller is preparing. So after this, the virtual machines that we're going to move from on-premises to Microsoft Azure can authenticate it from Azure secondary domain controller that we are preparing now. So any issues you can troubleshoot with network security group in Microsoft Azure, your on-premises firewall rules, then the internal Windows operating system firewall issue. These three are the common issues that you may face once you set up a site-to-site VPN. So that is all about this demo. My YouTube channel. In the coming video, we're gonna see how to migrate Hyper-V virtual machines to Microsoft Azure using Azure Site Recovery, and following to that, we will see how to move from VMware and also how to move your on-premises workloads. Then later on we will do and how to move from AWS also.